Okay, welcome everyone. I'd like to introduce you to Brian Young. Brian is going to be conducting our session on Doceri this morning. Brian is with TLT, and he also supports faculty in the western campuses out in the Pittsburgh and areas west in that part of the state.
And Harrisburg.
Harrisburg too. All right. Well, I don't think of that west, but
No,
anyhow. Brian?
So I've been working with Doceri since it became something at Penn State that we were piloting to see how faculty would use it in the classrooms and with their teaching. So a little background: Doceri is basically a wireless touchscreen mouse for your computer. So you connect to the Podium computer, and you see what's on the Podium computer on your iPad. So I can walk around the room, and I can control my presentation from anywhere. It doesn't need to just be a PowerPoint presentation or a keynote or anything like that. You can control basically anything from the iPad that you can do on the computer. So that's one thing. The second thing is I can also annotate on top of the screen here. So I can actively annotate my presentation while I'm giving it to my students. I can pull up a whiteboard, or if you're so inclined, a chalkboard, and this basically becomes endless chalkboard, whiteboard space. So we have a lot of instructors that this amount of space to write is great for about 15 minutes worth of class, but not an hour. So using this, they can continue to write as much as they need to, and on top of it, it all gets saved. So I taught middle school history, and it was always heartbreaking at the end of the day to erase everything that you did all day, and then it's disappeared from your universe. So this way, you have a copy that you can pass on to your students. You can use for exam reviews, stuff like that. So that's the long and short of how Doceri works. There's a feature in here that allows you to record the screen, and I should probably do that. So with this version up here, you'll see the toolbar up top on the screen. Most of the time in the classroom, students aren't going to see that. They'll just see your presentation. So from here, you can see what the toolbar actually looks like. And you can see you can just pick background colors to write on top of. Let's just do yellow is too abrasive. Also have some graph papers and stuff like that. So you can load your own custom backgrounds into this thing too. So if you have a chart or a graph that you use a lot in your class, you can just have it there available and write on top of it. So one of the things with Doceri is you'll need an iPad and you need the software. So the software is installed on all of our ITS managed Podium computers now. So if you're in a classroom that has a Podium, I would say chances are very great that the software is already there and it already works. Most of our campus locations already have it installed as well. So if you don't and you want to use it, let us know. You can email doceri@psu.edu and we can talk about how we can help. Does anybody have any questions before we move forward?
Can you talk a little bit about the hardware that you're using to wirelessly project what's on your iPad?
It's software on the computer, and there's a free app.
Right, but what's on your iPad is being communicated to what's up there.
Yeah.
Is that I'm assuming via AirPlay?
It's through the software. It's Java. So AirPlay doesn't work in our network infrastructure. So we don't have Apple TVs anywhere that are going to function at Penn State. So this doesn't use Apple TV. The software installed on the computer allows
It's through the computer.
Yeah, through the iPad to connect through that, and then the computer is basically what's being projected.
Right.
So
right.
we're just seeing a mirror of that on here.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is Doceri is able to mirror itself to the computer.
Yeah, the annotation features, and Dave, you may know better than me the technical way that it works, but
Well, in a normal circumstance where you're not seeing the Doceri interface on the projector like we are now, you need one iPad, and that iPad connects wirelessly through the normal networking on any campus to the podium computer. And then the podium computer is just connected over VGA or DVI to the projector. So you're basically just showing content through the iPad, through the computer to the projector. What we're doing here to let you guys see what the toolbar looks like is there's an iPad that's connected to the computer over wireless, but it's also connected, that iPad is then connected over VGA to the projector.
Right.
And so that way you're able to see the toolbar. But under normal circumstances, you don't need that physical connection to the projector. Your iPad is connected wirelessly to that computer, and then the computer projects.
So I think that, like, most scenarios that I've seen or imagined have actually projected from the iPad using AirPlay, but I guess that's not the case.
Right. Well, yeah, because the problem with that is the way that we deploy our wireless networks at Penn State, AirPlay doesn't work.
Right.
And so it's just sort of a non-starter. So this sort of lets you get around that limitation and still be able to use your iPad in the class without being attached to the podium.
Thank you.
and some of our faculty use Doceri to control their presentation, but they still have apps on their iPad that they want to project. So they will connect to the podium with the dongle and just, at some points, be connected straight into the podium and show the iPad screen. And at other points, disconnect, jump on the computer, and it gets complicated fast.
Yeah.
Right.
Our IT department here at the libraries has a lot of security concerns. They initially locked it down, even wouldn't allow us to connect to the voting machines. Can you talk about some of the security concerns maybe you run across with other areas across the libraries?
So so all of the libraries are part of DLT.
Right.
So we've had some, at other campuses, there have been security concerns through DLT. So I think it's just general DLT concerns about security.
Yeah, just general, yeah.
But that's,
Well, in terms of Doceri opening up, possibility of.
I think any software can open up the possibility. We have it on 400 computers in our classrooms. And
Have you met much resistance though of some of the other
No.
TLC labs?
Well, to put it in perspective, TNS, who maintains the firewall rules for all of the firewalls on the campus, they opened it up on their firewall. So if TNS isn't concerned, then it's probably not really that much of a concern. Because the worst that you could do, unless you're able to put malicious code on the computer, the worst someone's able to do that with that connection would be to connect to the computer, and you can only do that once you're logged in anyway.
Right.
So as soon as anyone's logged out, there's nothing that can happen anyway, and the port's closed.
Right.
So,
I believe we have Doceri on all podiums now that are a part of
yeah.
CLM.
If it's in CLM, it's a podium machine that has Doceri, which I think is 760 podium machines across the state.
Right.
Yeah, I went to a campus last week at Berks. I went to Berks last week at the library, and they did not, because they do their own machines at the library. So
Right.
you do run across a couple of those as well.
Yeah.
And we're happy to talk with any departments that are interested in Doceri but are not part of our network to help them with getting it set up. That's what's been happening at some of the Western campuses. They're not in CLM. They're planning to go into CLM over the next year or so, and they are interested in using Doceri. We can help communicate what needs to be done and get it set up, and then when they join CLM and they're in the group, they'll just be there. So. Any other questions?
How do we engage those who are not on CLM with your group?
Just send an email to doceri@psu.edu.
Or tell them to contact CLM support
Right.
and tell them to get on CLM.
Those are trying.
Small steps. So what I thought I would do would just be show you a few examples just from how instructors are using the iPad in their class to change their teaching a little bit, give you some ideas of what's happening. I think we probably have around 75 to 100 instructors across Penn State using Doceri right now. And I would say most of them are enamored by the fact that they can control their PowerPoint and they can draw circles around things that are important. So that's I think the most basic use case for faculty right at this point. They're using it as a presentation tool. They clutch their iPad and do not put it down or let it go for most of the class. The nice thing is you can still control the podium computer. So this doesn't take over control of anything. So I can run through my presentation up here as well. So some instructors will just leave this guy to the side, and as they're presenting, they'll stand at the podium. When they need to walk around the classroom for whatever reason, they can just pick up their iPad, circle, underline, all that stuff. The second use case that has been catching on a lot in the sciences and engineering would be using the camera feature. So when you're in the annotation mode and you have a whiteboard up, there's an option for you to put an image on the screen using the camera. So this is iPad 2 and above. With the camera, the instructors are having their students work on problems together in small groups. They'll walk around, look at their work and say, this one is good enough, or really bad, and there's a reason why, and we would like to share that with the rest of our group. And they'll just pop it up on the screen. So you can have 4 or 5 different examples from students on the screen in real time, and then you can annotate over top of it. Have students explain it, hand the iPad to a student, and have them figure out the rest of the problem, what have you. So this becomes, I think this is a very interesting way to get over the fact that students don't like to come to the board. They don't like to stand up here and write on the board because they feel self-conscious, so they could work at their desk with their group so they're not singled out. And then you can share 4 or 5 anonymously, basically, and have them work together on a solution to problems. Any other questions? Matt?
Are they taking pictures of, like, say, math problems that students are actually writing?
Yep.
And they are visible
Oh, yeah.
to the class? Because you took a picture of, a mouse, but
Yeah.
you could actually take.
Yeah, you can take a picture of the thing. But I would say, I bet you some money. It's usually like $1. Yeah, so
It's also kind of busy.
yeah, the iPad camera has been pretty good as far as being able to read it. The nice thing is once it's on the screen, I can resize it and I can turn it upside down, move it all over the place, just by clicking and holding on that image. So if you have more than one and you want to put it up on the screen, you can take another picture and put it on top. The students are amazed. So this is one of the chemistry faculty here at University Park's teaching a summer course, and she's like, they think it's like I'm a magician. Like, how can you take a picture and now it's on the screen? It's just amazing. So they kind of get into that and like to see their own work projected to the rest of the class, and they talk about their experience.
I imagine that saves them a lot of time too, the instructors. Yeah, my question is, and I'm going to throw another use case at you, and you can tell me if this is reasonable. I facilitate a lot of training with my group, and a lot of times, like, I'll be in a scenario where I'm in a room of people on their laptops, and if I'm projecting the same way that you are off of a laptop or a computer on the podium, and I'm walking around, and I'm done basically demonstrating something about a new piece of software or whatever, and I want to go around. I give the group like an exercise to do, and I'm walking around looking over people's shoulders, and somebody's run into a problem that I want to talk about and illustrate to the rest of the group. Can I then, from my iPad, instead of having to go jump back in front of the classroom and control the computer, can I control the computer from the iPad, just standing right behind the person, so I can basically work with them to follow up and show everyone what it is that we're talking about and doing.
Yeah. So I'll open up the Word document from here. So you can absolutely open up other pieces of software.
Yeah, and you can write on this too and annotate it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the nice thing is if they're on a computer screen and one of our instructors, an IST instructor, does coding. So he actually takes a picture of their code, throws it up on the screen and says, "Why is this not working, guys?" So take a look at, they missed a semicolon, missed something, and it gives them the entire class a chance to sort of talk about what the issue could be. So yeah, you can do. So anything you can do on the computer, you can do from here. I'll say that it can be a little bit slower, especially if you're trying to type, which is. The nice thing is if you need to do something like that, as you're getting things ready to go, you can jump up here and say, I don't know what this thing wants me to do, so I will X that out, and I will say it, fine.
That's where a stylus, I think, comes in handy, hitting all those little type buttons.
Mm-hmm. And so another thing with this, and let me jump on this guy so you can see that. Stop. So from the iPad, now this is not what the students will see. This is what you're seeing on the iPad. You can zoom in 1000% if you need to click in a certain button so you can see it. But the students aren't going to see that on the screen when it's connected the normal way. So
that's wonderful.
And the other nice thing is, especially when you're writing, iPads aren't known for their great precision when it comes to drawing or writing on the screen.
Right. Yeah. The same. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I can write zoomed in, and when you zoom it back down to 100%, it's a lot more legible than.
Yeah, I've noticed that that's also the case for when you're creating video, because I have used this already for creating like instructional videos, and it's the same case. It's the recorded video does not have any of that zooming in and out, but it is helpful for being able to
see what they're doing. No, I mean, if I was a student and had to watch this all class, I would not be happy. So it's really nice that it doesn't do that, because you'd have like 400 sick kids in a classroom, and that's you don't want to be there. So, does anybody have any questions? Comments, concerns? So we're at 11:30. We have about 20 minutes. And what I would love to do is, anybody want to mess around with this and see how it works?
I just have a question. Well, if you wanted to project, if you wanted to use this to control a Mac, would that be possible to like just remote into a Mac or something through a podium, or?
So some of our podiums have Macs. And they already have Doceri installed.
Okay,
there's
so
a PC and Mac version.
So you can just switch over to the Mac and run it that way.
Yeah. Works just as we have a Mac laptop, and that's typically what I do these presentations on. Is a Mac laptop. We have an altered setup here. So. Any other questions?
You might want to maybe mention the favorites menu on how to put stuff in there.
So on the top of this toolbar, there's a little star that allows you to add favorites. So you can actually add to this shortcuts to applications. So if you use MATLAB a lot and it's on the computer, you can have a shortcut to that where instead of going to the start menu and trying to find it, it'll just pop up on the screen. Not a lot of instructors that I've worked with bother with this or use it because I think they're comfortable with how the computer lays out their settings. But this, for me, becomes really handy when I have to jump between 3 or 4 different applications or 3 or 4 different documents, because trying to zoom in to the bottom of the screen and click on Word and then jump back out, they're right there, and it will toggle through them pretty quickly. Oh my goodness, look at all this. They're all outdated. Did you use the Quick Start differently?
I've used it before when I'm giving a demo and I have 2 or 3 applications that I want to switch to, particularly if I'm in Keynote and then I want to switch to a browser. I'll put Keynote and Safari in the quick launch menu, and then I can just quickly tap that and switch between the applications without having to end my Keynote presentation and then go and find Safari and launch it and then go to where I want to. Using that, you can basically use it as a task switcher, and I don't have to go back to the podium to do that.
It's like other stuff. If there's any questions or anything you'd like to talk about with this, that's what we're here for. So,
Brian, I have a question.
yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the connection from the device to the computer?
So because everything's different here than what it normally looks like because we have two iPads connected.
Let's assume you don't have the other iPad connected.
Let's do it this way. So typically, when you connect to Doceri, I'm not sure if it's going to let me. You can just kind of close it down. So when you open Doceri from the desktop, this pops up on the screen. So to connect your iPad to Doceri, there's an application that you install on the iPad that's free. So you go to the App Store, type in Doceri, download the app on your iPad. For the podium computers, Doceri is already installed. If you're using this on your laptop, personal laptop at home, something like that, you can download a free trial of Doceri from doceri.com. So there's software on the computer, there's software on here. The software on the computer is installed, the app is installed. You open Doceri, it looks like this. It asks you if you want to connect through your computer or through an iPad alone. We'll choose computer. There's a little camera icon on the bottom. When you click on that, it's kind of hard to see, but the camera opens up and we can take a picture of this code that's on the screen. Once we do that, that connection window changes and we're connected to the computer. So it should take no more than 5 seconds. If it takes longer than that, something's not right. One of the things that we worry about tremendously is instructor time, because even with clickers that we do a lot of work with clickers, if it takes an instructor 12 minutes to set up the Doceri's software and have it to function and work, that's not really a good use of their time when they should be teaching. So it should take that long. It should take 5 seconds. Once it's connected to the computer once, if you get kicked off or you accidentally jump off, it will remember the IP addresses that you've connected to, and then you can just click on that, and it's connected back to the computer. So you don't even need to do the picture of the code or anything like that.
Could multiple people be connected?
So right now, Doceri has an option. It's a beta version in this version of the software that allows multiple iPads to connect to the computer. You have no control over administrative rights, so everybody has the same access to do whatever they want. So if I was in your class, Alan, you would open a PowerPoint, I would close it. I would write things on your PowerPoint that you don't want me to write. That's what I would do just for you. But that's, typically, we've had 4 or 5 instructors across the university try it with a bunch of iPads. And the students were wonderful. Nobody wrote bad words or anything like that. They participated using the technology and they really enjoyed it. Future versions of the application, Doceri's told us that they're working on one where you would have control. So the instructor would connect to Doceri, and then the students would be able to connect, but the instructor would have ultimate control over who gets to display what, where they get to write, where they don't get to write, all that stuff. So I think once that's available, we'll see more of that being used in the classroom. Most instructors that we've worked with that have done the multiple iPad connect, we've loaned them 2 or 3 iPads to try it out, and they really liked it. So they were a little more fearless than most instructors. They say, your students can do whatever they want, and here they say, no thank you, that's good, I don't want to do that. So but the few that have, I think they saw a benefit of students being able to collaborate in real time in class, and the students liked it too. So it's available, Alan. It's just, if you were to do it and I was in the room, I would have a good time. Any other questions?
You want to go over projects mode?
Oh, there's so many modes. So every time that you do something in Doceri, if you write on the screen, if you start to record, I'm recording here, it will record what's on the screen in my audio picked up from the microphone. So that'll be saved as a movie file. The other projects where you're writing on the screen are saved as project files. So within Doceri, there's a little folder in the top left corner that all of our projects get saved in. So we can open up a project from last week, and we can continue to annotate on top of that project. We can export these projects as PDFs. So if you use this during class to write on your presentation, after class you can go back to your office, open up that project, export it as a PDF, and throw an Angel and have students, they're able to access that stuff. The recordings get saved in a different spot. So right to the right of the folder is the record button. If you wanted to record, you just hit the start recording button. It will record your audio and what's on the screen. If you hit my recordings, it will bring up all of the video recordings that you've done in your class. So here's a 22-second one.
Bring up their PowerPoint and want them to be fancy. They just say WordPress, the new site.
So that's an example. You can create these recordings and upload them somewhere. I wouldn't recommend uploading them directly to Angel because they'll get big, but you have the ability to do some lecture capture on the Jeep and on the fly instead of having it.
There's editing capabilities as well, right?
In the projects, the editing capabilities are a lot better. In the video stuff, no. So when you record the video and you stop the video, that's what you get. You can pull it out of Doceri and edit it in any sort of movie editing software that you like, but within Doceri, the video stuff is just what it is.
Right. Because I've used, just speaking from my own experience, I've worked from the projects and I've speeded up parts that I thought were, you can't cut, but you can speed up. I speed up parts that just seemed like they were slow, stuff was loading or whatever, and then you can slow stuff down.
And even within the projects, Natalie, so like our advanced instructors that have spent some time with Doceri and want to do more with it, they will create their project and write out everything that they want before they record their audio. So they will go in, write out equations, write out all the
Yes.
problems,
Yeah.
and then that
Yes.
project they will put on a screen and hit record,
Yeah.
and then step through it
Yeah.
step by step
Yes.
and talk over it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that gives you a better quality video, but the instructors that I work with typically say, that's going to take me time to actually do, so I'll just hit
Yeah.
record and get what I get. So.
Exactly.
Any other questions, concerns? Matt?
Any word on an Android?
So the word is, Android is a no-go. And I don't think they'll be creating an Android version anytime soon. Basically what the folks from Doceri have told us is that with an iPad, it's the same operating system. So iPad mini or any iPad, you're on the same operating system. It's really stable, it's well done. They can work within that system to create an application. With Android, since it's open source, there's a big difference between an $89 Android tablet and a Galaxy 3 tablet. So because the screen sizes vary, because the placement of buttons vary, they would have to create an app for each version of Android on each of the tablets. So they're not interested in doing that. They have, I guess Microsoft has contracted with them to create a Windows 8 version. So over the next couple months, they haven't given us a real definitive timeline, but they're actively right now working on a Windows 8 version. So if you have a Windows 8 tablet, you'll be able to use Doceri in the classroom, hopefully soon. But, I've asked them to be part of a beta test to see it, but they're not ready for that yet. So hopefully when they are, we'll be able to get our hands on pre-production and see how it works. It should be the same, I would imagine, but as long as it works.
What's the projection for beta release on that, you know? Is it fall or maybe 2014?
So the Doceri rep said before the fall semester, and then said we're not really sure. So I would say yeah. As soon as they have a version that we can see, I will let everybody know, because we're interested to try it out too. Because I would say that a lot of our instructors say, I'm not going to buy an iPad. I'll buy a Windows tablet. I'm not going to buy an Apple tablet. So if it becomes available, we'll let everybody know, and we'll be looking for folks to try it out if they let us do that.
Go on quick. Use of this with the clicker software. Have you worked with faculty doing that?
Most of our faculty that were in the pilot, for whatever reason, were using clickers too. So because this is just mirroring the desktop, you can use the iPad to control the clicker software. So I think I can do it in about a minute, or I'll be able to get it connected. And I don't know if there's one of these. I could show you what it looks like. I know I have clicker software here somewhere.
This is why you don't have the instructor view for your students.
I'm sorry, close your eyes. Yeah, I can do it. I can do it from this one so nobody gets sick. I don't want to make you get sick. The day is young, you know what I mean? I don't. Yeah, lunch is right after this, so I don't want everybody's lunch. So I just plugged in a receiver base. We have the clicker software up in a second. And from here I can control the clicker software. I can bring up the results chart. So I can do everything that I would do with the instructor remote, and then on top of it I'm able to do more than just that with the iPad and other applications. So yeah, it's an interesting mix, because when instructors with clickers end up doing is they will bring up a whiteboard at times and write out questions. So it's more, even the clicker stuff becomes more on the fly because you can write out equations, write out questions if students are having problems. You can take a picture of 4 of these documents they were working on, put them up and say, which one would you choose if you had to choose one and why. So. I had about 5 minutes prepared and the rest for questions, so if there are no questions, we can split out. Al?
I'm just looking online here. There's a remote app for the iPhone for Doceri. Have you experimented with that?
There is?
There is.
It's brand new.
Brand new. Sorry.
No, that's cool.
I'm thinking that you're not going to be able to do a lot of annotation very easily on a screen that's this big, but at least you can flip through your slides.
I imagine
It's
that's
a little
that's
bit
what it
lighter
is.
and not so
Yeah.
cumbersome to be walking around with an iPad.
Yeah, it's probably just a PowerPoint controller. I mean, we talked with Steve from Doceri, and he said we will not release one for the iPad on the iPhone because it's too small and you can't write it.
Yeah.
So I wonder if they. I don't think you'd be able to do any sort of meaningful annotation.
No,
But
What's it called?
I just went to Doceri iPhone app and
Because when I search
Well-
Doceri on my iPhone, I get no
Doesn't come up,
returns.
yeah.
it may, it might just be the same app that you can download it.
You can't download the Doceri app on an
Okay.
iPhone, it won't show up as an iPhone app.
Yeah.
That's why I was curious if it had a different name.
Okay.
Are you on the Doceri website?
No, just common sites.
Because I know that Doceri also has the ability to do some room controller stuff. So they have switching systems for podiums, and you can control that stuff from the iPad. But and that might be the remote app that they're talking about. But to my knowledge, they don't have anything for a phone that we're doing with Doceri.
That's the iPad app though. It's not an iPhone. It does say available on the iPhone at the App Store, but it's the iPad app, even when you look at it, that's an iPad. I think that's just a misprint. I know what you're saying though, because it says Doceri Remote, but if you go to the iPads, or the store, the App Store, it's called Doceri Remote, but that's the app that you use on the iPad. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It does say in the button iPhone, but it's not
Yeah.
an iPhone app.
Why are you trying to sabotage me?
Yeah, come on.
Let's just.
So we,
Yeah, anytime I try to download it on my phone, it doesn't even pop up.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that Doceri says, that it's just too small to do anything. And I think people would just struggle with it more than.
So one of the things that I can't remember if you mentioned it or not, that a lot of instructors that we've talked to that have used this don't use any of the annotation features. But what they love about it, beyond anything else, is that they're not tied to the podium. And in a classroom with 20 students, it's easy to sort of get around and talk to people. Once you get to 50 students, 100, 300, 700 students, it becomes very isolating to be standing at the podium and addressing this giant group. With Doceri, you don't have that limitation anymore. You can be anywhere in the room where there's wireless, and at UP, all of our classrooms have wireless throughout the room. So even if they don't make use of any of these other features, just the fact that they're not standing at the podium and feel like they're tied to the front of the room is a huge win for them. And I've had instructors tell me that we'd let them borrow an iPad, and 2 days later they went out and bought an iPad because they said, I tried this in 2 classes and I'll never go back again. So it's pretty powerful stuff.
I think an interesting option for the lecture capture is that you can have multiple speakers and you could be handing off the iPad and be giving multiple presentations and record the whole thing from the microphone in the iPad and be capturing those multiple speakers.
Yep.
And we were experimenting with, you can get this through Apple, it's an Apogee mic, and it plugs into the bottom of the iPad. The audio quality is way better with this. So if you're doing a presentation where you are not walking around the room, so if you're using this to record lectures for an online class or something like that, this is $99, and the quality, it sounds like it's from a recording studio to my terrible ear. compared to what you get with the microphone and the.
If you have an iPad and you get the camera adapter that has like USB
Yeah.
connection, you can actually use a USB headset
Yeah.
on an iPad.
Oh, cool. Yes, I think one of the nice things about this is it's not taking control of anything, so it just gives you more options to what, to augment what you normally do. So that's where instructors they're not creating new presentations because this software doesn't allow them to use PowerPoints. This is just, it's an overlay on top of what you already do to change how you interact in your class. And that's what we've been seeing is that like, oh my God, I can be here. Instead of being back there, I can be here. And you wouldn't think that that would be a game-changing event in the universe, but for some instructors, it's like, the guy won't keep quiet, so if I can just stand here, he will be quiet, and that's a big deal. I mean, and it for classroom control and classroom management, that helps. I mean, I taught 12-year-olds, I need to stand by them so they shut up. So that's the way it goes.
For the favorites menu that you showed, can you save like a URL or something like that? So it'll actually open a specific location?
Yeah, there's a folder in My Documents. You make a folder called Doceri, and you put anything you want in there, a shortcut or an application, a document, and then it shows up in that quick launch folder. The other thing I was going to say is it also, in terms of teaching technology, it sort of in one fell swoop makes interactive whiteboards completely unnecessary, because not only is it doing everything that an interactive whiteboard is doing, but you can do it at a scale where everyone in the room can see it, as opposed to limiting it to 6 feet tall so you can write on it. And for the cost of one interactive whiteboard, you could buy 6 iPads, at least. So it really, and you're not talking. The classic problem of teaching to a chalkboard is that you're talking to the chalkboard. And interactive whiteboard is the same way. You're still talking to the whiteboard, but with this, it completely eliminates the needs for that.
I was also thinking that you could host an Adobe Connect session with a whiteboard that anyone in the room could connect to and whiteboard all together and have that projected.
Yep.
And you could be interacting with it with Doceri, and everyone else could be interacting on their machine in front of them.
Right.
Or any similar thing.
With supporting the Western campuses, especially in February, it is not fun to drive to Erie in February. So we did a lot of sessions using Doceri and Adobe Connect to work with faculty and just for them to be able to sketch out their ideas. And when they connect to Adobe Connect with their iPad, it all works together. So it's really nice.
I was wondering if you guys have any suggested best practices for using the whiteboard. Is that just to relay my own experience with it? I found that even using a stylus, I know that if they have the wrist guard and everything, but I found that the iPad surface area is pretty small, and I found it very difficult, and I don't know if it was just kind of a cognitive disconnection, like, yeah, I'm used to writing on a whiteboard, so I'm used to, so I'm not used to just kind of stepping back from it and being among the people that I'm trying to communicate with. So I don't know if you have any suggestions for overcoming that, or best practices.
So if you're in a classroom, I think the best bet would be, especially when you start to write, because you can zoom in 1,000% and it's tiny on the screen.
Right.
One thing that I see as beneficial is when you start to write from back here, so you can kind of get a gauge if it's way too small or way too big. And then once you do that for a little bit, I think you'll find what magnification on the screen works well to get small enough writing so you don't need 12 pages to write 2 sentences, but also big enough so that people can see it from the back of the room. The other thing is just practice, practice, practice. So most of the instructors, the first time I hand them a whiteboard, they go, God, I can't do this. I don't know what to do. This is horrible. It's going to be so messy.
I can imagine. Yeah, that's...
But we have instructors that do calculus problems and draw out charts and graphs and all this stuff in 15 minutes during class because he's in Hazelton. And we have a recording of his presentation from the symposium on the symposium site too. And you can see they're very detailed, but he's just gotten used to writing on
Yeah.
it. So it does take some practice.
Takes practice, yeah, I mean, but the advantage of having it recorded and being shareable then afterwards is huge.
And students can put it on their computer and blow it up too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they can zoom in and zoom. I mean, I have a
Yeah.
25, some giant monitor in my office, and they show up on the screen. The quality's not bad, even on that big of a monitor from writing on the computer. So it's pretty good. Glenn?
The Doceri website for getting used to the writing, they recommend you practice on the graph paper background first. So you can get that,
Really?
because you can see the squares in the graph paper regardless of how much you zoom or don't zoom are the same size
Yeah,
when
yeah.
projected.
That makes sense.
And if you can get used to what should the size be,
Yeah, yeah.
then once you've gotten that feel for it, then obviously
Yeah.
the whiteboard. Because
It's
it's faded enough
Mm-hmm.
that it's not in your face and obnoxious, but it kind of gives you that guide.
And the really nice thing too is you can change your backgrounds. So if I'm writing on this and I'm trying to draw a graph and I want it to be somewhat legible, I'm zoomed in pretty far in here.
Right.
And then if I need to do this and talk about this and that, I can go into the background and just change it to a whiteboard. I could change it to a chalkboard. I can change it to a different background. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But then you can eliminate those lines even during class if you had to. And most of our math instructors are pretty concerned about the specifics of their graph and where they lay and how they lay, so they do that. They bring the graph paper up, they draw it on the graph paper, and then they take it away if they have any reason to. If they want to write by it.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
Any other questions? Email us at doceri@psu.edu, or you can just email Dave or I directly. Dave Test. Sorry, Dave. But we're happy to help. Glenn?
Can I make a shameless plug?
Sure.
Thank you.
Wait, what is it?
Doceri, that would have been a good question a second ago. We are offering Doceri hands-on training at the end of August if you want to play with it before you decide whether it's something that you want to attempt to incorporate. We are providing iPads for participants who come to use during the training session. That's happening on, I believe it's August 15th. Yes, August 15th at 1 o'clock in the 23 Willard Suite. So if you want to play with it before you make a decision, we'll have what I call iPad 4s. They're not iPad 4s, but we're calling them that, to play with it and kind of get a feel for it and see kind of how it functions. So shameless plug over.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Go to lunch.
Just what about advantage?